Welcome to my presentation on issues with electronic waste for Xavier University's BASE 550 class. First, I would like to cover some statistics on smartphones and technological devices and how often users replace them. Secondly, I would like to cover obsolescence of products. So, how quickly and why do smartphones grow obsolete, or why do we replace them? Then, I would like to cover e waste statistics, some problems that causes, and the solutions that we can use to tackle those problems. Lastly, I will ask questions for the class. The three biggest producers of smartphones, Apple, Samsung, and Huawei, sold a total of almost 700 million smartphones in 2022. They created over 50 new models. Let's talk about Apple first. Apple created five new iPhones and they sold 232.2 million iPhones in 2022. Samsung created uh, 11 new models and they sold 260 million smartphones. And Huawei created 38 new models and sold almost 190 million smartphones in 2020. This adds up to almost 700 million smartphones, like I mentioned, and this causes the turnover rate of smartphones slash technological devices to be extremely high. iPhone users are most likely to upgrade their phone every 2 years, even though research suggests that the turnover rate used to be higher and it is increasingly getting lower. So people upgrade their phones quicker and quicker. Some reasons for that may be that people always want the newest phones. If they can afford it, why not buy it? Second, smartphones have a life expectancy. Technological devices in general have a life expectancy. Uh, the CEO from iFixit stated that every review of every smartphone ever should state that this product will expire in XXX time. Smartphones have a life expectancy. And if they don't have a life expectancy, they will grow obsolete. Let's talk about obsolescence. Obsolescence is when a product becomes useless to its user, essentially. There's a couple different types of obsolescences. Let's talk about planned obsolescence first. Planned obsolescence is a devilish tactic that companies use or employ to bring back business and ensure that customers come back to them. Some strategies may be slowing down phones, for example, or making smartphones incompatible with newer upgrades. Another example will be the declining battery life. This is an actually proven concept because in 2019, I believe it's 2019, Apple got fined in Italy for purposely slowing down smartphones and they had to pay huge fines. Another reasons why smartphones or technological devices in general grow obsolete or grow useless to a consumer is because they're so difficult to repair. Let's say a consumer breaks their phone and they try to repair it by themselves. They're going to have a very, very difficult time by the way the phones are constructed. As you can see in the picture above on the top right corner, smartphone producers very, very often use glue instead of screws to create their phones. This is a completely unnecessary tactic that makes repair extremely more difficult. In addition, a consumer will have a very difficult time finding repair manuals online. And lastly, even if the consumer went to Apple, the repair costs are usually extremely high. Say you break your screen, you pay about $200 to $300 to get that screen replaced. And most users at that point probably think, I might as well get a new iPhone. This is where iFixit was founded, on the belief that every consumer should have a right to repair their phone, and they do it for a much cheaper price than Apple or Samsung themselves. The scariest reasons why technological devices are growing obsolete or will grow obsolete even faster is the 5G incompatibility. 5G is a new network that we're gradually transferring to that will slowly phase out all technological devices that are not compatible to it. A study suggests that millions of burglar alarms in England will grow incompatible to the 5G network, and they will just have to be thrown out and replaced. This will cause a dramatic increase in electronic wastes. Similarly, older smartphones will also not be compatible, and many more electronic devices will cause like a massive, like a dramatic, like increase in electronic wastes. Let's talk about electronic wastes. There's some statistics. In 2019, the world produced a total of 53.6 million megaton of electronic wastes, and less than 20% of that was properly recycled. Those 53.6 million megatons were 21.6% smaller 5 years ago. So they were around 40 something million megatons. And the scary reality is that by 2030, we expect to produce 74 million megatons, which means we would have doubled the amount of electronic waste produced in only 16 years. This is an extremely scary reality because of the problems that electronic waste brings with it. Since only 20% of it, or less than 20% of electronic waste got recycled, the other 80 or slash 82% of electronic waste will either end up in landfills or it is incinerated. And there is problems to both of those ways of disposing of electronic wastes. Let's talk about incineration first. Incineration is extremely dangerous because of lithium batteries. Lithium batteries are highly explosive, and if they explode, they can lead to like extreme harm, and people can get hurt. If electronic wastes end up in landfills, then that can lead to materials leaching into the soil when it rains. And there's a lot of harmful substances in technological devices like cadmium, lead, zinc, manganese, nickel, lithium, mercury, gold, and even silver, the most dangerous of which are lead and copper. And then lastly, of course, if we don't properly recycle electronic devices, then the precious materials that are in them cannot be recovered. We use around 200 pounds of raw material to create a singular iPhone. So recycling them is extremely important when it comes to managing raw resources. So now I want to talk about what can happen when this lead and copper leaches into the soil when it rains. Lead and copper isn't just harmful to us, it's also harmful to microbiota. It kills them, and then the animals that feed on them die. Those animals can, for example, be worms. And then who hunts worms or who eats worms? Birds. And what happens when there's no worms? The birds die. So it disrupts the ecosystem. It's a very simple concept. Secondly, if lead and copper does leach into the soil, it can end up in underground water, contaminate that. And if that underground water is connected to bigger water bodies, it can end up killing fish. It can end up infecting fish. And if it ends up infecting fish, then that puts humans in danger because we consume fish. And one of the most dangerous substances to us humans is lead and copper. We have seen that with consuming lead and copper that was in drinking water in the Ohio River a couple months ago, for example. So we need solutions to tackle those problems. Currently the most efficient solution are external companies, which are specialized for recycling, repair, or cleaning. I've already mentioned one of those companies. It is called iFixit. And iFixit was founded after lawyers of Apple have purposely demanded repair manuals to be removed. And that has sparked the right to repair movement, which right to repair, and this is Kyle Wiens' quote, Kyle Wiens' quote, the CEO of iFixit, essentially says that, hey, if you're going to make a complex product, you need to make parts, tools, and information available to consumers. Consumers should have the right to fix their own iPhones. iFixit helps consumers repair their phones and significantly decreases electronic waste. Then the other company that I would like to talk about is ERI, or Electronic Recycling and IT Asset Disposition. And John Chagarian, the executive chairman, mentioned that all the materials that come out of it, the steel, the plastic, the aluminum, the copper, the gold, the silver, the palladium, the lead, is all recyclable stuff, including the glass. None of this stuff ever had to go to a landfill. So this just shows how bad we have been with recycling. And we have only recycled around 18% of electronic devices. And ERI is a big part of that recycling. They work together with companies like Best Buy, for example. Another solution would be governmental regulations. Let's talk, for example, about the right to repair. The right to repair is something that is extremely endorsed by the European Union, but it is not endorsed by the American government yet. And companies or people are trying to get the American government to endorse the right to repair, because it will be extremely beneficial to have companies offer their own repair, it will be extremely beneficial for companies like Apple to have to offer um, repairing products. Lastly, I want to talk about internal strategies. Every company should feel some form of obligation to help the electronic waste problem. And they can do that by a couple different strategies, like, for example, partnering with specialized firm like Best Buy has done. I can bring my phone, smartphone, technological device, whatever I want to bring, to Best Buy. They have partnered with ERI, who then recycles all of those products. Some companies could also create their own internal recycling programs. So they know their devices best. They know best what can be recycled, and they could even profit from those recycling programs. The difficulty is implementing those because it costs money, takes time, and their net earnings will certainly take a hit. Another strategy that companies could employ would be donating, selling, and swapping. Donating older phones to people that are really in use of it, selling older phones again, or swapping older phones for newer phones. Those are all strategies that could be employed, but they would take some sacrifices from a company. Lastly, create repair friendly products, or help repairing products, or making repairing products more beneficial for customers. A lot of times, companies produce technological devices that are purposely extremely difficult to repair. Hence, for example, they use the glue, which is completely unnecessary. So I want to thank everybody for my presentation, for listening to my presentation, what I had to say. Here is a couple questions for class to foster a discussion. First, how often do you upgrade electronic devices? And after listening to my presentation, are you more inclined to keep your electronics for longer? Second question, what do you think of planned obsolescence, both from the consumer's and the organization's perspective? Do you think Apple selling iPhones without charging blocks is strictly business, or is it electronic waste motivated? And lastly, what do you think will be the most efficient solution to limiting electronic wastes? Uh, those are my sources. I want to thank everybody for listening again, and hopefully we can have a great conversation in the comments.